Hello and welcome back to the Master Division of the Intermezzo Championship. My last game sadly ended in a loss, with Arne making a nice comeback out of a difficult position. With that, I'm sadly no longer in the lead despite my good first batch of games, and Pajada is now the one leading the group. And the game that we are seeing today will be my last game against Pajada, so in order to remain with chances to advance to the Grandmaster division, it could be very important to finish before Pajada, but also the other opponent in that game, Danny Boy, definitely still has chances to maybe advance. He is some points behind at the moment, but he has only 3 games finished, so if he gets a win out of this, he is definitely also completely in the race for the first place. So it could again be a very important game, and now without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. In this game I'm playing in the 3rd position, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that we have Pierre in Internet in H3. We also have the Hollywood together with Marlene and Chaplin, but no Fleming. We have not that many lab leaders. There's Steve Jobs and Einstein, so some science payoff leaders. There is no spaceflight, no Manhattan Project. We have Churchill for the military, and then there's also Mandela. In H2 we have no ocean liner service, no Suez Canal, so two potentially strong wonders aren't there. We have James Watt together with the railroad though. We have both Nobel and Newton for some science setup. We have James Cook at least, but as said no Suez Canal. Then Anthony Gaudi as a culture leader, but apart from him not that many. And 2 military action leaders in H2, 1 military action leader in H1 with Jan Žižka. Nostradamus and Genghis Khan can help with the strength. Columbus and Eleanor could serve as nice transitional leaders, and Isabella and Leonardo maybe providing some economical value. We have Silk Road but no Universitas, St. Peter's Basilica but no Forbidden City, Himeji Castle but no Great Wall, and then also Machu Picchu and the Taj Mahal. Payada is playing in first position. I guess the decision is relatively easy for him. He just takes the Rome roads here. Apart from that, he only could have taken some yellow cards. Danny Boy will then grab Confucius, and then it's my turn, and I think it was relatively clear for me what I want to go for here. There's of course Sun Tzu, a leader that certainly has some potential, but there's no Suez Canal in the game. There's Jan Žižka, Columbus, Genghis Khan, so still some synergy, and maybe players who really value Sun Tzu very highly might still go for him in this position, and it might still work out fine for them. But here I decided to just go for Ashoka. I can take him together with the yellow card. I'm playing in the 3rd position, meaning the cards from H1 will be available for cheap earlier for me, meaning hopefully I will be able to get his full bonus going relatively quickly. As we saw, there are some nice transitional leaders like Eleanor and Columbus in the game, and so I thought that Ashoka should be the best pick here. I then might still have a shot at getting one of those wonders, and also took Ashoka here together with the stockpile actually. When you're playing Ashoka, I think it can be nice to have a yellow card in hand that you can just play at any time, because ideally I might just keep that card in hand for quite a while to already have one color for Ashoka. So if I take a rich land here and use it for the mine, then I have it out of my hand again. But if I take a rich land and then just keep it in my hand for a while, then it's unclear if I can maybe use it at the end of the age when I don't have Ashoka any longer, while the stockpile I can just play every time. And of course there's also the Silk Road in there. So there's the dream that maybe I could play it with the Silk Road. And the Frugality could also be a fine pick, but I went with the stockpile here, and I wanted to also take one of those cards that aren't on a discard spot, because there is still one wonder in the deck, the Library of Alexandria, and I thought it could be nice if that one is revealed, as then I should either be able to get the Stonehenge or the Library, and with both of those wonders I would be very fine with. So I was now excited to see whether the Library will be revealed. And it's actually the first card to be revealed, so let's see which wonder I will be able to get. Sun Tzu is now in the discard spot, meaning if Payada doesn't take the Urban Growth, the library will stay on 2 civil actions for Danny Boy, maybe making it more likely that I at the end will be the one getting the library. Let's see if Danny Boy is willing to pay an additional civil action, or if he's just going with one of the other wonders for 1 civil action. He elects Confucius, builds a mine, increases his population, and then he just takes the Stonehenge. I guess that's a fine choice, and then I will get the library now, which I was happy about. And then I will build a mine, I will take the library. And then it's a bit of a question, do I want to take this Engineering Genius or not? And I do think I should take it here. Of course, with Ashoka, you, especially early on, to get his full bonus going as quickly as possible, you maybe need a lot of free civil actions to take some other colors. But nonetheless, getting now 2 resources for 1 civil action is still a nice deal. It might allow me to finish the library quicker, which then leads to more economical value. And also I take it away from Pajada. Now that I take the Engineering Genius away, there will be no H1 card available for him to take for 1 civil action. So I do think the Engineering Genius, if that would be available, that would make his turn quite a bit better. So I, at the end, wanted to take the Engineering Genius. I could just elect Ashoka, but I think now it's clearly better to keep him in hand for 1 more turn, increase my population, especially with Payada having Sun Tzu and Danny Boy having Confucius. It's likely that there might be 2 events seeded before my next turn, and then it could be important to have a free population for development of warfare and religion. I draw the Dark Ages and the cultural influence. Payada seeds and opens the development of civil life. He will use it to increase his population, and he is willing to delay his second lab in order to get some steps of the Rome roads going, and then uses his last 2 civil actions to just take Columbus. With his additional draws, there should be a good shot that he is getting a good colony at some point, so I guess that's a fine way to spend those 2 civil actions, and maybe better than taking any of those other cards. Now it's Danny Boy's turn, and he will first of all seed. The development of planning is revealed. The options for that are development of science, markets, and warfare. Danny Boy takes the development of markets, interestingly, to gain 2 additional resources, builds the additional lab with the development of civil life, and then has enough resource to potentially already finish the Stonehenge at the next turn. He takes frugality, reserves, then builds 1 step on the Stonehenge, which is maybe not ideal for him, because maybe he could hope to get a masonry at the next turn, but I guess the other alternatives to spend his last civil action are also not really that great here, and he doesn't know for certain whether he will get the masonry, so probably fine to already build a step here. I was happy to see that he took both of those cards, because that means that a warfare will fall down to 1 civil action for me, and it will make it now a lot easier for me to get a full Ashoka bonus going. I can elect Ashoka, I can then build my second lab, and with the last 2 civil actions I wanted to take the warfare and then 1 of those grey cards having the full Ashoka bonus, and thanks to the additional resource production from Ashoka I will be able to use the Engineering Genius to finish the library at the next turn, while still, thanks to having the other yellow card in hand, the stockpile, having the full Ashoka bonus going, and then I think I'm starting to produce some nice amount of resources here. The question was whether to take the theology or the drama here. And here I went with the theology. There is some synergy for the drama. Not the most. Bach is missing, but there's Anthony Gaudi, Marlene, Chaplin, Hollywood, so certainly some synergy. But here I thought that maybe the theology is the safer pick, because the event deck might be flipped quickly, Payada has Sun Tzu, Danny Boy might now get Jan Shishka, Nostradamus will be discarded, so there is the potential for some aggressive play, and then I thought it maybe could be more important to have a card in hand that actually helps me with the happy faces and frees up a worker in case I need it, so I decided to go for the theology here instead of the drama, but of course if I get the right leaders, the drama could still turn out to be quite potentially interesting technology, and could also be a fine pick, but here I decided to rather just go with the theology. Then I draw some new cards. The Vast Territory, I was somewhat happy to see that, because that means Payada can't draw it for Columbus, and maybe doesn't have the strongest colony available for him from H1. He finishes the Rome roads this turn, takes the cultural heritage and the Engineering Genius, so 2 strong yellow cards, and maybe at the next turn can finally start building his second lab. Danny Boy seeds, and the development of Great Roots are revealed. He will just finish the Stonehenge, doesn't go for the masonry here, and then takes Jan Shishka. Now it is my turn again, and I don't really want to push. I'm not that nicely prepared for military and for strength increase, and with that rather want to slow down the deck a little bit, and so I just pass the politics phase, and I have enough resource to finish the library here, which is also enough to get me out of corruption. For the last civil action, it's the question on whether I just want to increase my population, or if I maybe want to take a card. And maybe it could be the right call here to just increase my population, if maybe there's a military technology available for me at the next turn, or something to invest my resources into, like alchemy or iron, or maybe a code of laws to take. It might be important to maybe have already spent that civil action to increase my population. Nonetheless, at the end, I was willing to take that breakthrough for one. It's just 2 science for 1 civil action. Is quite a nice deal. Of course, I have some additional science production already from the Library of Alexandria, but if I should invest into warfare, then it might still be nice to maybe have even more science to easily go for something to upgrade a military tech and then also a government form at some point. So I do think it's a somewhat close call here, but at the end I was still willing to take the breakthrough, and thanks to the Library of Alexandria, I actually still have a free hand space, because if my hand would now be full, I think I certainly would have increased my population instead of taking the breakthrough. I keep all of the events. I draw a colonization card and the Crusades. Pajada seeds and opens the development of religion. I have a free population, so I can take advantage of that. Pajada reveals now the legion tactic. Won't elect Columbus this turn yet, so we don't know if it will be the tactic that gets upgraded or not, but it certainly could be, especially with Pajada investing into another warrior to get out of corruption. He gets some iron production going, still is delaying his second lab, but has now some increased production and has at least a cultural heritage in hand for some additional science. Now it's Danny Boy's turn. He seeds. He actually has lots of science saved up. Could even go for fundamentalism this turn if it would be in the row. Development of politics is revealed. With that, the event deck is flipped, and the first H1 events can already be revealed now. And I drew some more events and the naval trade agreement with the development of politics. Danny Boy this turn just makes sure to invest his science. I have drawn the Dark Ages, so he doesn't have knowledge about it, and so I guess it's a good decision by him to just go for monarchy, go for code of laws, and then he will go for Yanchishka, increases his population with the frugality, builds a warrior, has the fighting band tactic, is now the strongest, has some strong cultural production, and has now 6 civil actions and 4 military actions going, so a very nice amount of actions. Hasn't increased his production yet, but still I do think it's a very solid setup that he's having here now. The Silk Road will be discarded for him. I do think in his position it could be a very strong wonder for him to get. The second copy of Iron will stay on 2 civil actions for me. I will start my turn by offering a naval trade agreement to Pajada. I don't have knowledge about any colonies. There's no Suez Canal in the game. And so I thought the additional blue tokens hopefully will be worth it for me. And Pajada is willing to accept a pact. And then this turn I could potentially go for the iron, but here I was willing to skip it because the additional civil action I can't just easily pay, and there's also another card available for 1 civil action that I can invest into, and that is the alchemy. I could also play it a bit safe, maybe go into swordsman, maybe build some warriors and develop the warfare already, then maybe preparing to copy the upgraded legion tactic at some point. But I can't really easily get stronger than my opponents this turn anyway, and so I thought I might just invest into more economical upgrades, and then hopefully I will still get any military tech. The copy of Swordsman that is in the row is the first copy of any military tech that has shown, so there's still quite a bunch of them left, and so I think it's fine here to just go for the alchemy and then increase my population. However, I decided to actually already build a warrior. I'm not sure why I exactly did this, but I guess if I'm at 1 strength, maybe Danny Boy could try an aggression against me. I could defend, but I would lose my defense card. And I do think maybe I was also thinking about being able to develop the warfare, maybe build another warrior and being able to copy a tactic or something. But maybe it could also be fine to not build this warrior here. I draw 1 card. That 1 card is actually a Legion tactic, so that could be helpful, as the upgraded Legion tactic might not be available for me to copy at the next turn. Pajada increases his population, builds the warriors, now at 6 strength, makes sure to be the strongest, elects Columbus, so the Legion tactic will now indeed be the one that is upgraded, and then he increases his population, takes the Taj Mahal for free as he has now elected his new leader, has an engineering genius so he can relatively easily finish it. He will now have quite a solid amount of culture production from his wonders, especially in age 3. He will produce 5 culture with the Rome roads and the Taj Mahal, which certainly has to be respected. Now it's Danny Boy's turn. He seeds, and sadly I do get punished here for being the weakest of the race reveal, so both of my opponents gain a little bit of push with getting those additional food or resources. Danny Boy has the chance to take the second copy of Iron. He has just enough science to get into that and will go for 2 upgrades now. Is now at 5 resource production, can increase his population if he wants to, and takes the swordsman. Also builds an additional warrior, interestingly, to get a bit stronger. Now it is my turn. I again don't want to push. I will increase my population this turn. And I will also build a warrior, reveal the Legion tactic, going up to 5 strength. And then it's a bit of a question, what leader do I want to go for? The ones that are on the row are the last that are remaining. I could go for Isabella for 1 civil action, or for Leonardo or Eleanor for 2 civil actions. And mainly it was a decision between Isabella and Leonardo here for me, as I think I'm in a position where I don't necessarily want to push every turn. So I think Eleanor is maybe not the greatest pick here, even though she is a nice transitional leader. And Leonardo, of course, will produce me quite a lot more value, especially with me not knowing whether there are some colonies coming. I actually have already some additional blue tokens from the Naval Trade Agreement, so the ones from Isabella are not that much needed. But the 1 additional civil action that I have to spend this turn is certainly relevant, because basically if I go for Leonardo and elect him, then the last civil action kinda has to be to play the stockpile, because I need, when I lose the 1 food production from Ashoka, I need the 1 additional food from the stockpile to be able to increase my population at the next turn, and if I would not be able to do that, I mean, I could go for the theology, but it just makes a big difference being able to increase my population 1 more time or not. So meaning if I go for Leonardo here, I don't have the civil action left to develop the warfare, and with that I stayed 5 strength instead of going up to 6, meaning I stay the weakest and I am potentially in danger of some strength events. Nonetheless, I have the alchemy and I have lots of science saved up. I know that there are no dark ages in the deck, which is some very important knowledge for me here, and I just thought that Leonardo will produce me a lot of additional value. 1 strength event is at least already out, and with that I was at the end willing to pay the additional civil action, even though it could mean that I am vulnerable or that I get hit by 1 or potentially even 2 more bad events. I elect Leonardo, and then now my food production is dropped, so I need to play the stockpile. I think keeping Ashoka for another turn is not really an option, as I'm very tight on civil actions. So I do think it's a fine decision, but it could get punished, and maybe I could have also just gone for Isabella and then already developed a warfare, but I have that much science saved up that I should easily be able to develop quite a bunch of technologies, and then Leonardo might even just give me like 1 resource per turn as well, but he also gives me additional science, and that is just a lot of value over a few turns, so I at the end was willing to be 1 civil action behind and to potentially be at risk of strength events, but it was a close call for me. But Pajada might just use Columbus anyway, there's at least a chance. No, he will seed, and sadly, maybe the worst strength events hits me here. If I would have known that that one is on top, I certainly would have gone for Isabella. Sadly, I didn't know this, and with that I will now lose a yellow token while Pajada gains 1, so with those 2 strength events on top, I was a bit worried on the direction in which that game is going for me. Pajada will continue his iron upgrades. For the moment is even at 7 resource production, but will soon be at 6 again when the Rome roads will switch to science production. He also takes that right copy of irrigation, making sure that he is the one who has a food solution from H1 in hand. Danny Boy seeds, now there's a colony revealed. I wasn't willing to bid more than 1 warrior, and even that 1 warrior could already be a bit tricky. And at the end, Danny Boy is able to win it for 1 warrior and a colonization card. He this turn will play the reserves for food, which allows him to increase his population, rebuilds the warrior, but he will stay at 5 strength, so now he is the weakest, at least at my turn, but at my turn I can develop the warfare to make sure that I'm again still stronger than him. He then takes 2 urban growth, so if he gets maybe scientific method or even that copy of alchemy that is coming down the road at the next turn, he might be able to use those urban growths soon. The age ends now, and this turn, now that I lost the yellow token, I have to go into the theology now, and now it's also important that I have that one in hand instead of a drama, so that pick earlier on maybe it turned out to be irrelevant. Without losing the yellow token, I could have just increased my population, but now I still have an uprising issue even after I increase my population. So I go for the theology, increase my population, build one directly, upgrading to one also would have been enough, but I still would have an unhappy worker left, and I don't have knowledge about the rebellion. And then with the last civil action, I decided to just develop the warfare, making sure that I'm not the weakest any longer, making sure to get an additional draw immediately. It's still a bit risky, because I could have taken swordsmen or knights, especially swordsmen could be important in order to be able to upgrade my warriors, but here I was willing to take that risk. I am now dependent on riflemen. All of the players really would like to get riflemen in this position, so it could be nice to have those swordsmen in hand, but I was not willing to delay any of the other actions, and at the end just decided to take the risk of potentially missing out on the riflemen and maybe being in an awkward position then. I also can actually copy the upgraded Legion tactic. I thought about not copying it, maybe making sure to get more draws going, but I might want to copy it at some point anyway, so maybe it's best to just put it behind me now, making sure that I'm the strongest at least, and then just having that one additional strength for the next few turns. I draw one card, the Independence Declaration. Pajada doesn't use Columbus yet, maybe he wants to hope to get another colony from H2. Could even have drawn one now by the call to arms. I was happy that I indeed copied the tactic, because now I don't lose any civil actions, and in my position I think losing civil actions would have been quite bad. Pajada will then go for the Code of Laws, is willing to invest some science into it, could delay his government form, but still he is now no longer stuck on 4 civil actions, which could be important. Now it's Danny Boy's turn, he seeds, and the inhabited territory is revealed. I was actually willing to bid 2 warriors, but mainly to push the price, as it would be a bit expensive for me in order to rebuild, so maybe it was not really worth it, but at least I make sure that Danny Boy has to spend 2 more colonization cards. Danny Boy has lost even 2 civil actions to the call to arms, and he interestingly will just take the selective breeding in the breakthrough here. And the selective breeding is probably a bit of a safety pick. He doesn't have a copy of irrigation, there's no ocean liner service, so missing out on a food solution is a real threat. Nonetheless, I was a bit surprised. I was thinking that maybe the scientific method also could be a very strong pick for him here. For civil action cheaper, I guess he doesn't have the greatest things to do with the civil action that he has remaining then, but now that he doesn't take the scientific method, I won't go for them, meaning that Pajada might just be able to go for 2 scientific method upgrades, and maybe at that point that is the more important boost to a civilization compared to when he maybe would have been compared to maybe him going for selective breeding upgrades. Nonetheless, long term it might do more harm to Danny Boy to miss out on a selective breeding. There's another copy of scientific method in the deck, and he doesn't need to fear that I will go for it. And there's the Harvard College, so I think it's the safer call, but it might also mean that Pajada gets a very strong boost out of that scientific method at his next turn. He then builds a warrior to get a bit stronger, but is still the weakest, meaning I'm actually the strongest, and with that I was for the first time in the game willing to cede. And the cultural influence could be a bit tricky. Danny Boy has more cultural production right now. Pajada can finish the Taj Mahal. Crusades, at the moment I also really don't know if I have nice ways to get stronger, so at the end I just ceded the Independence Declaration. At the moment I have no colony anyway, and so hopefully that will be a relatively safe event for me to push. I cede, and another colony is revealed. This time pajada is able to win it for 2 warriors at least, so it seems like he doesn't have a defense card. It's of course a bit costly winning that for 2 warriors, but he has Columbus, and with that, he maybe has now a higher chance of maybe having drawn a strong H2 colony, which would make quite a big difference with having Columbus. So with that, I do think it's certainly worth it to bid those 2 warriors, of course depending on what colonies he already had in his hand before. Now it's my turn, and as you can see, I actually grabbed a selective breeding for 3 here. And it was not a clear call, because there's also a constitutional monarchy on the row, and I have a lot of science, I can easily invest into it, I can get my actions going. Now that I don't take it, it's certainly possible that pajada will go for it. Maybe he will even use Columbus, get a colony, take and elect Robespierre and do a Robespierre revolution into the constitutional monarchy, and then I don't know when I will get the next government form. So I kind of thought about going for the conmon and then doing some stuff. But it's the second copy of selective breeding after Danny Boy has taken the first one. Pajada hasn't invested into irrigation yet, so could easily take it. There's no ocean liner service in the game, meaning if I don't take the selective breeding now, it's likely that it will miss out on a food solution. I could maybe get the statue, but for the moment it also would be very costly. So at the end I was willing to take the selective breeding here, just making sure that I have a happy face solution. Danny Boy at least has already the monarchy, so I should be able to get the next government form that is revealed after that conmon. There are 3 more on the deck, so hopefully it won't take too long. And so at the end I was willing to just make sure that I have that selective breeding going. I could then potentially take a yellow card, for example reserves, just to have a way to get some more resources going, but instead I just increased my science production even more. With taking another card, I also would make it that the constitutional monarchy drops down to 2 civil actions for pajada, which I didn't like that much. I could have taken a knights as a bit of a safety pick. Both of my opponents don't have any cavalry technology, so the cavalryman also could be quite heavily contested, but I don't have any free population at the moment, and ideally I would like to rather get the H2 version so that I'm prepared for H2 tactics, and so at the end I wasn't willing to spend the civil actions on those knights. I draw some cards here. The terrorism could be interesting at the moment. It's somewhat close between me and pajada. Pajada is a bit behind, but he will get the Taj Mahal, so let's see if I maybe can somehow make that work. I also draw a colonization card, so if there are more colonies coming, maybe I have a shot at winning one of those now. Pajada indeed uses Columbus, and as you can see here, it looks like he will indeed go for the Robespierre plan. And the colony that he got is the developed territory 1, so he didn't get lucky, he didn't draw an H2 colony, still was willing to elect, to use Columbus this turn so that he can go for Robespierre now. He goes for Robespierre, goes for the conmon. At least the 3 additional science from the developed territory are still somewhat relevant, because it allows him to go for the revolution now while still having enough science to get into scientific method. At the next turn he will even increase the science production by going for an additional lab, and then at the next turn with as many resources he can easily upgrade his science production by quite a lot. Danny Boy seeds, the rebellion is revealed, but all of the players have fixed their happy faces. Danny Boy this turn will just take and finish the railroad. I think that's a strong turn. He misses out on the cannons for that, delays the selective breeding upgrades, but he is now the strongest, has some very strong resource production, so that looks like a very solid turn. Now it is my turn, and as you can see, the second copy of conmon was revealed immediately after the last copy, so I was happy to not get punished for my decision of not taking the conmon at the turn before. Also, I'm at least the second strongest, and I decided to seed the cultural influence here. Maybe I could have thought about seeding the terrorism already. Pajada has now gone for Robespierre's, got a bit of culture with him, but it was still a bit too risky for me. He might finish the Taj Mahal soon, but it could also be possible that he starts going for scientific methods. The cultural influence could of course backfire a little bit if Pajada finishes the Taj Mahal, but hopefully it won't backfire too much. And if I see that maybe Pajada increases his cultural production soon, maybe the cultural influence could even be a bit helpful to help me winning the terrorism, if maybe Pajada gets a bit more culture out of that event than I do. So at the end was fine seeding the cultural influence here. The new deposits are revealed. I was not happy to see that. Both of my opponents gain a big resource boost, and both of them, especially Pajada, I do think he has nice ways to invest all of those resources. The Taj Mahal, the scientific method. I was a bit worried that yeah, that pajada might just get now quite a big boost, that he is able to improve his position by a lot, while I'm still on bronze mines, on HA farms, I have some strong science production, at least I will now get a boost in actions, but even after my boost in actions, pajada still has more actions than I do. Danny Boy just went for the railroad, has no 20 resources saved up. I was a bit worried about my position here and that my opponents maybe are getting a bit too big of a boost here. I developed a Conmon, I take the cannons, I think I kinda have to take that for one civil action, and then I also still want to get out of corruption. I can do that by going for one upgrade to selective breeding. I could even just go for another upgrade that would also make sure that I can increase my population at the next turn. Maybe that could be the right choice, but at the end I actually decided to take the efficient upgrade here. Of course, it's 3 resources against 2 food, and it costs me an action. But the reason why I was willing to go for that is that if one of the 2 copies of coal is in a row for me at the next turn, then having gone for that line instead of upgrading the second farm will allow me to go for 2 coal upgrades immediately, meaning the efficient upgrade will translate into even more resources, and I do think resources I might need even more. If a coal would be available, then I could go for 2 upgrades, and then I still would gain a population in 2 turns, which might be fine. So at this turn I was fine with delaying the food production in order to get that yellow card. I draw some cards. Pajada cancels the naval trade agreement. We will see the reason at the end of his turn. The one missing blue token would have caused corruption for him this turn. He actually finishes the Taj Mahal, as you can see, without using the engineering genius, but he has already a plan on what he wants to use that, because he is going for the Statue of Liberty here, then is building a warrior to get out of corruption. As you can see, he is just out of corruption, so the one blue token that he regained makes a difference. And yeah, it's an interesting line. He delays his science income, but he has his government farm already, has a decent amount of science saved up, and the Statue of Liberty just will produce him even more culture and also helps him with his population, because he's the player who missed out on the selective breeding. So I do think that's a fine call, and the statue certainly will be a helpful wonder for him. He then copies the fighting man tactic, is even willing to miss out on a draw for that. Maybe he doesn't have a defense card and doesn't want to be at the risk of an aggression from Danny Boy. Danny Boy seeds, opens the knowledge of the ancients. Sadly, my opponents gain more out of that than I do. Danny Boy this turn goes for the selective breeding, can go for 2 upgrades, increases his population, takes the breakthrough, actually builds an additional religion, interestingly, with using that urban growth. I guess at this point he is maybe fearing that he won't have the chance to use those any longer and is just using one of them already, increasing his culture production by a little bit. Could have also increased the science production, but maybe he will need that happy face at some point. And a thing that is looking interesting for him is the Harvard College that is coming down the row. If it falls into the one civil action area for him, then he could even just take and finish it at the next turn, which could be very strong for him. Now it is my turn. Pajada went for finishing the Taj Mahal, and it is still a bit risky, but here I was actually willing to cede the terrorism. Also partly because I thought I might need to take some risks here. My opponents are building up some very strong civilizations. I will now be able to get into coal. I still have some things going for myself as well, but I lost that one yellow token. My yellow bank is really not in the best shape, and I definitely felt a bit behind here, and with that I just need a good event or need something good happening to me in order to come back or to stay competitive, and with that I was willing to cede the terrorism. It will be a bit tricky, and I first of all was happy to see that I actually get an additional population here with the immigration. It's a bit tricky with the terrorism, because at the end of my turn, as you can see, I will actually be at 22 culture. But now the cultural influence might actually be coming in handy, because Pajada, either he seeds, then at least he gets culture for seeding and he gets an additional culture compared to me out of the cultural influence, or he doesn't seed, then he might finish the Statue of Liberty. He has enough resource to do that and go for 2 scientific method upgrades, which is extremely strong. And then he has 6 culture production. gets more culture this turn, and then gets even more culture out of the cultural influence. Also, he's playing before me, so he has an additional production before Danny Boy's turn. So at the time when Danny Boy seeds, hopefully pajada will have more culture. So it is a bit risky. It's not a safe terrorism, but I was hoping that it might work out. Pajada might hopefully lose the scientific method to that. Danny Boy for the moment doesn't have a big building, but maybe there's a chance that he will build one before the terrorism is revealed. And in this turn I will just go for the coal. Taking the efficient upgrade is now quite nice because that I have taken that, because I can now go for 2 upgrades, going up to 7 resource production. Then I have 2 civil actions left, and I certainly wanted to take the cavalryman here. I haven't drawn an H2 tactic yet, and I just really think I have to take that here for 1 civil action. And then with the remaining civil action I could potentially just take that urban growth, which will be useful at some point, but I think I still have a decent amount of science saved up here, and so I was willing to take the architecture. I have already built some urban buildings, but I maybe could still go for wonder, even though after the Harvard College is gone and the Harvard College might be taken by Danny Boy, there's only the Eiffel Tower left from H2, but maybe the Eiffel Tower could actually be fine for me in this situation. And I might still build some more buildings, so at the end I just valued the architecture more here than just taking this urban growth. I draw some cards, sadly no tactic, but another colonization card. Pajada doesn't seed, instead he will indeed at least build 1 step of the statue, goes for 2 upgrades to a scientific method, finishes the statue, so gets some very big improvements going for his civilization, has 2 civil actions left, and is willing to take the 2nd copy of cannons here. Is now at 6 cultural production, so together with the cultural influence I was hopeful that maybe I will be able to pull off the terrorism. Of course it's a bit bad that my opponents get a bit more culture out of that, but especially the 3 that I lose to pajada might very well be worth it if I can destroy a scientific method from him. Danny Boy builds an additional warrior, increases his culture production even more with Jan Shishka, takes the Harvard College, just finishes that, has now some strong science production, and is now also quite a bit running away with the culture. So I thought it could be tricky catching up to my opponents here. Both of them were sadly very nicely able to invest those additional resources that they had thanks to having gone into iron and getting the new deposits. So I was a bit worried, but I have coal mines going now. I might hopefully be able to win the terrorism, so I also still have some things going for me. And also some good news for me is that I am actually able to get the rifleman here, which is a technology that I think is strong for all of the players. I see it here, and now I have to try to recall what event that was. I think it was the crime wave that I seeded here, but I'm not 100% certain. And yeah, I'm not the weakest. I will now get the rifleman. Maybe I will, at the time of the crime wave, be the strongest, but I just wanted to move the deck forward to potentially hit the terrorism. Even with the 2 culture of seeding, I will now only be tied with pajada at the end of my turn, meaning if pajada seeds, then he will already have more culture than me again. But the terrorism isn't revealed yet. Instead, the freedom of movement is revealed, and I just used it to save a civil action, moving a bronze mine into a coal mine. I will then take Nobel. There are some other leaders that I could go for. James Watt is a little bit late. My coal upgrades are now already completed. Catherine maybe could be fine, but I don't really need her military action at the moment, so I think Nobel is just the strongest leader for me here, and so I take him. I also take the rifleman. First I thought I might want to develop the rifleman, because I kind of want to develop 1 more technology with Leonardo and then switch to Nobel. But the thing is, I don't know what tactic I will get yet, and I don't know if I really need the rifleman. Of course, just being able to upgrade is quite strong, but here I at the end decided to actually commit to the architecture instead of committing to any military technology, and then switch to Nobel. Maybe there could even be the idea of keeping Leonardo for another turn, maybe being able to score more resources, but I just gain additional science immediately, and there's maybe a small chance that the age could actually end before my next turn. So I just went for Nobel already this turn. I can then also, thanks to the 1 resource that I scored, thanks to developing another technology with Leonardo, I can go for another upgrade to selective breeding, so I have now definitely quite a strong economy going, and with the last civil action I can then take the revolutionary idea. I get some draws here. I was hoping to get a tactic, but sadly no tactic. Also, as you can see, I actually drew the crime wave here. So the card that I seeded here is certainly not the crime wave. Let's see if I remember it at some point. Maybe it was a happy face related event. No, I don't think I would have. I seeded that. Let's see. Maybe I will remember. I think it was actually the strategic territory too. Now I think I remember it. Because at this point, first of all, I have already 2 colonization cards in hand, and I thought one way back into the game for me, especially now that I have all of those military techs, could be with the big H3 war. And I thought with the strategic territory and with me having those defense cards, maybe it will help me with the additional draws and make sure that I get maybe a strong H3 tactic and a war. So that was the card that I've seeded into the deck. I also thought about the economic progress, but I for that event wanted to wait a little bit until committing to it. Pajada builds a cannon, takes the frugality, the urban growth, and the opera. And Danny Boy seeds, opens the independence declaration. That event worked out quite nicely for me. I guess it doesn't have the biggest impact, but still Pajada has to lose either 2 strength or a yellow token, a blue token, so it's definitely a bit of a hit. The terrorism is still not revealed, but at least it will make it that Danny Boy will actually invest into something here. Builds 1 opera, there's Marlene and Chaplin in H3, so some synergy, the Hollywood, so I do think it's nice for him to invest into that. He then takes the cavalryman and he is now at 9 cultural production. Will lose the cultural production from Jančiška soon, but the leader that he will be getting probably is then James Cook, and that will then he will get 3 cultural production out of his leader instead of even only 2 that he has from Jančiška right now. So he is after his turn at 61 culture and definitely has a bit of a culture lead here. This turn I seeded the economic progress into the deck. And yeah, it's a bit of a risky event, but I hopefully it will be nice for me. I have coal mine selective breeding, especially against Pajada it might end up being nice. He hasn't upgraded his farms yet. He's only on iron production. He has some additional blue tokens. Actually 1 from developed, 1 from Taj Mahal, 1 from Rome Roads, but he might lose 1 from the developed now because of the independence declaration. Danny Boy could profit from it, and there is a risk because Danny Boy has the chance to get a copy of oil going with the railroad, and if he gets that early oil, then of course the economic progress might be really great for him. But I just wanted to push that, and I also decided to actually pick the Eiffel Tower here, that I can finish at least for a very small amount of actions with having the architecture and only 1 wonder build so far. And I also thought the happy face might be quite relevant. I have only an H1 happy face solution, and soon I might need another happy face, so I thought it might be a good time for the Eiffel Tower here. And also the Eiffel Tower will help me to at least not fall behind too much in culture. And then I thought the Eiffel Tower is a lot more affordable for me if I have that economic progress coming. So I seeded that into the deck. The National Pride is revealed, which gives Danny Boy the most cultures. The terrorism is sadly the last event. I think now would have been a nice time for me to reveal it after Danny Boy has invested into the opera. Sadly it stays in the deck, but my culture is now definitely clearly behind Pajada, so I should now hopefully be, at my next turn finally be able to destroy some buildings from my opponents. I took the justice system here as I just thought I have a lot of science and it's good for me to invest into another civil action here. So I developed a justice system going up to 7 civil actions. I played a revolutionary idea, and I'm not sure if it is the right call, but I decided to start going for rifleman here. It could backfire because Pajada just went into cannons, was willing to take the cannons. Instead he could have taken 2 copies of reserve, so it's certainly possible that maybe he could have a copy of fortifications. I thought about starting with cannons, but it's just, generally I think it's nice starting to use some of my free military actions to start building up some military. I thought about building a cannon, but then it doesn't work that nicely to build the Eiffel Tower at the next turn. Because I mean, I maybe wouldn't necessarily need to do this action. but also, I mean, I could have increased my population instead. The problem is, if I increase my population instead of upgrading here, now that I upgrade, even when I now lose the 2 yellow tokens, I have no unhappy phase. While when I increase my population and I don't upgrade this, then I out of the sudden have 2 unhappy workers after I lose the 2 yellow tokens, and I didn't have knowledge about maybe both or at least one of the events that punish having unhappy phases, so I kind of thought it's better to upgrade this theology, this temple to theology now. And then if I build a cannon instead of upgrading to Rifleman, I'm missing 1 resource to finish the Eiffel Tower at the next turn, and I thought it could be important to do. So at the end I decided to commit to Rifleman here. At least those Riflemen will be useful for a bunch of H3 tactics. I have already a bunch of warriors, so ideally I will be able to use those units without needing to rearrange them, and yeah, and also it makes me the strongest for now. I will get some draws, sadly still no tactic, but 2 strength events. Now H3 starts, we can maybe also take a quick look at the overview. And I do think I have a somewhat fine position. I will increase my culture production with the Eiffel Tower. I have now 7 civil actions. I have all of the military text, and with that I have some potential in the military. Nonetheless, especially Danny Boy, with his big culture lead and still having a solid economical position, I was thinking it could be tough to catch up to him. However, he has only the cavalryman at the moment. Who knows, pajada might not take the rifleman, and then Danny Boy certainly could get punished in the military, and I have some potential to build up some strong military. So that could be one way to punish Danny Boy, but economy-wise, he might be able to keep his culture lead, and it might not be that easy for me to catch up. Pajada is not that much in front of me in culture, but now that Rome Road switched to culture production, he is for the moment producing more than me. I might be able to follow up if I finish the Eiffel Tower at the next turn. He has some solid economy, but hasn't upgraded his farms yet. Maybe that's somewhat fine. He has the frugality and a very strong yellow bank. But he has only 6 resource production, so he's behind in that area. So it could, I might have a somewhat similar position than he does. I have also the strength lead for now, so I thought I was somewhat happy on how the situation has turned out for me now over the last few turns, also with the terrorism that I will now reveal soon. I will be able to do some damage to my opponents, but especially Danny Boy with the big culture lead I thought could be tricky to overtake, but he might potentially have some problems with the military, and also pajada if he doesn't have a tactic. Sadly for now I also don't have a tactic. One thing that might sadly help Danny Boy quite a bit is that the first copy of H3 sadly is a copy of oil, so pajada probably won't deny it. Maybe he could do it, but it would be costly for him. I mean, he's taking the Engineering Genius here, a card that he might be able to use it in H3 Wonder at some point, then of course it might be helpful. Maybe he could have thought here about denying the oil from Danny Boy, because that will just give him an extremely big boost. I of course also know that the economic progress is coming, so I was really happy to see this oil. It's still early H3, so pajada might still be in a position to go for that oil himself, but still it's a bit costly for him, and I don't think it's a necessity to take that here. The second copy could be revealed relatively soon, but I do think it gives Danny Boy now such a big boost that he will be just an extremely strong position, and maybe the only way to really punish him could be in the military. So maybe pajada could have thought about denying that, but of course it might just do some harm to himself. And when we think back about the standings, maybe pajada should be a bit more concerned about his position compared to me, instead of hurting Danny Boy. Now it's Danny Boy's turn. He accedes. The terrorism is now finally revealed, meaning I can destroy his opera and a scientific method from pajada. Danny Boy will get James Cook, increases his culture production by a bit, and then of course he will go for the oil. 1 upgrade gets him out of corruption. He is now at 14 resource production, will get the economic progress, and now his position is certainly looking very good now. Now it is my turn. I actually see the crime wave here. I'm not the weakest, and I just thought, no, I want to push, get some culture for pushing. I thought that maybe a military push could be the way to go, especially with those air forces being in the row now. I will get the first copy of air forces, and so I wanted to push. And the event revealed is actually the strategic territory, and here I was just willing to go all in because I think those draws could just be extremely valuable for me. And I was just hoping that I might get a war and or tactic, and then together with air forces and having all of those military techs, I could maybe just spend H3 mostly to build up a lot of military. I will of course still need to finish the Eiffel Tower, but I was willing to do that investment. At the end, I have to send all of my units and one colonization card. If I wouldn't have upgraded Rifleman, I could have just sent warriors and 2 colonization cards. Maybe I would have preferred that, but at least I have that 1 colonization card in hand still, which is now even somewhat relevant in order to be able to defend against an aggression. And as you can see, I have now at least a war already, the hybrid war, which maybe could be a bit tricky for me with the happy faces, but I have a war and I will get more draws, so hopefully I will have a chance to maybe get a tactic going. This turn I think it's clear that I have to take those air forces, as I think military is a very viable way for me to get a nice result in this game. And then I decided to just finish the Eiffel Tower here, get the culture production going right now. The happy face is not needed immediately, but soon might be again when I can increase my population a bunch of times. And then I have now invested a lot of resources into the Eiffel Tower, so I took that 1 copy of reserves. I thought if my plan is indeed to build up a very strong army, I might just need, even despite my strong resource production and despite the economic progress coming, I might still need help of some yellow cards because I have literally no units at the moment. And of course, with finishing the Eiffel Tower, I remain with no units. I can't bid for any colonies. I'm the weakest for the moment, but I have actually knowledge about quite of some bad H2 strength events, refugees, international negotiations, and international agreement are in my hand. Crime Wave is in the next event deck. So I was hoping that I might not get punished by events, I'm safe from aggressions, and also not having to build any military units also has an advantage, and that is that I don't need to do any commitment right now. It could happen that I draw a tactic. If I draw a mechanized army, it could have been bad to invest into riflemen. If I invest into cannons and then I draw shock troops, it could be a bit bad. I guess investing into cannons would be the safest bet, as it would only be bad for shock troops, but still, maybe it could be better to not do any commitment here. For the last civil action, I could have taken the endowment for the arts here. Maybe that will give me 6 culture at some point, so that could be fine. But I rather increased my population here, first of all, to just play it civil action efficient, maybe being able to take some potentially more important cards in regards of my military push at the next turn, but it also has another reason, and that is actually the economic progress, which seems a bit weird at first, because increasing my population doesn't change my blue token count this turn, because I actually had 4 blue tokens lying around here. I was at 12 food, and now I'm at 8, meaning I have now still the same amount of blue tokens lying around my farms, but nonetheless, during my production phase, those 2 food tokens will now be spent as consumption, and having increased my population will actually mean, as you can see at the end of my turn, that I don't have corruption for an economic progress. And with that, I do think I should clearly increase my population one time here. Could have, of course, taken the endowment, maybe instead of the reserves, but I thought the reserves might be the more important card here, also maybe to deny it from Pajada, to not help him having a lot of resources available to build up some military. And I was happy to see that I have drawn the mechanized army tactic here. I have a war, I have a tactic. Of course, it's a bit bad now that I have already developed the rifleman, but nonetheless, I have a way to build up a lot of strength. And with that, I was thinking, yeah, that going for that military push might be the way to go. At least thanks to the Eiffel Tower, I'm not falling behind too much in culture. And then let's see if I maybe draw even more wars. Maybe can even go for multiple ones, but I will certainly also need some time in order to set up my amount of strength that I need. I also draw the impact of science, which could be an interesting impact to have in hand. The second copy of Air Force is actually already revealed. It could be bad news for Danny Boy, because as said, one way how it could get troubling for him is if he gets problems with the military, and missing out an Air Force could be one step into that direction. It might help Pajada though, so I was not certain if I should be happy or unhappy about it, because It might, from a standings perspective, be good for me if I finish before him, but yeah, for maybe Danny Boy could have some issues without having air force available. Pajada will take Einstein, gets a quick replacement for Robespierre, but he has one more thing that he wants to do with Robespierre. First of all, he will of course take air forces, but then he can take the communism, do a Robespierre revolution, score some more culture, get this improved government form, and also even score one more culture with the Statue of Liberty. Then he will switch to Einstein, develops the opera, builds one, and has corruption, can't build a cannon because of not having any military actions, is now at 12 culture production, has lots of actions, has increased his resource production, so he's certainly also starting to run a bit away with the culture now. Danny Boy seats and the popularization of science is revealed, which I'm actually the best in, but it's almost equal for all of the players. Danny Boy will take the revolutionary idea, takes the fundamentalism here, increases his population, builds an opera, builds another opera, has corruption, but corruption is not too bad for him. He should have more than enough resource anyway, but for now he is still stuck on warriors. He made sure to take that fundamentalism, but let's see if he finds a good tactic for him to use. And he actually reveals the tactic already, which could of course potentially be backfiring. Maybe he wanted to make sure to use the military action already, or wanted to keep some other cards in hand. Yeah, but he has cavalryman, and if he gets tanks, then the hussars tactic could just be fine for him. He has that many resources that he can just easily invest into a lot of tanks, and then together with the fundamentalism, that already might give him quite some big strength potential. Now it's my turn. I actually don't see it here. I'm the weakest, and actually all of the events are not that great for me because impact of science is a bit tricky. If I go for a lot of units, might have to destroy something. I might have to destroy some labs. Impact of government is not that great now that Pajada went into communism, and Danny Boy might go into fundamentalism soon. Impact of technology is also not certain at the moment, especially with me maybe needing to develop cannons and cavalrymen, which aren't H3 technologies. I thought about refugees because of course I want to start building up some strength now, but the thing is I don't really want to reveal the tactic too early for Pajada so that he can't copy the mechanized army tactic, which would be an improvement for him and also for Danny Boy. Of course for him it could be helpful as well, even though he is lacking the techs for now. And I also want to make sure to still draw a lot of cards, maybe being able to draw a second war. And so I might actually not be the strongest at the time when that will be revealed, and so I decided to just not push at all here. I developed the cannons here. I think it's best to start with building cannons, because as long as I don't invest into cavalryman, it could be that I draw something like entrenchments or positional army, allowing me to go for a strong tactic without needing to develop cavalryman. Of course, the mechanized army tactic is one of the best tactics that you can get. But still it could be open, it could be good to stay flexible and for other tactics. I built 2 cannons, making sure to use my military actions that I have without missing out on any draws. I will increase my population to get out of corruption. First I thought about a turn where I take patriotism, reserve, satellites and military theory, but I think that might be overkill. I thought about military theory because maybe it could be good to deny it from Danny Boy, but Danny Boy has actually already the fundamentalism. He maybe doesn't really need it that much, and I already have the warfare. I will get the patriotism. There's no Gandhi in the game, so I was thinking that it's not that much needed for me to take the military theory. The satellites might be the better call, even, and especially now that it's available for 1 civil action cheaper. And so I at the end was willing to skip the military theory in order to be played a bit more civil action efficient. I just take those 2 yellow cards, I increase my population 2 times, and then I take the satellites. And I have now some free population. I will get another free population at the next turn. The Eiffel Tower is now doing some nice work, making it that I don't have any unhappy workers at the moment. Nonetheless, I will need a lot of population to get into the tactic. So I will, at some point, if I want to go for war, need to destroy something, but for now I have some more free population that I can use to build up my military without having to do some destruction yet. I keep some events to seed the war and the tactic, And I do indeed get another tactic here, the positional army, and I have already the rifleman developed. It gives me more strength. Of course, it also means more units, so I was not certain if I will go for that. It might mean having to destroy 2 more things. But of course, it also gives me more strength. So maybe if I manage at the end to go for 2 positional armies with air forces, it could be a very nice alternative option to have here. And also, I was very happy to draw the impact of progress with having taken the satellites. That's quite a strong impact for me. International tourism could also be fine, even though it's not certain whether my opponents will accept that, as they have more Wonderstand than I do, and I would get an additional production out of that. Pajada is actually playing a raid against Danny Boy. Danny Boy can defend, though, with having 2 H2 defense cards. Pajada then takes the United Nations. That will score him 16 points plus a potential impact that he can evaluate. He develops the architecture, scoring 3 culture with Einstein, builds another opera, increases population 2 times, and I was thinking here that Payada might certainly end up in a bit of a vulnerable position, because he has now done some investments into those operas, which he maybe needs in order to keep up and to maybe to develop a culture lead, but in order to face a very big military push, he already maybe could be lacking some resources and might now need the help of some yellow cards. Maybe the military buildup could be perfect for him, because just building some more cannons and some air forces might not be enough if I go for some very big push. The other thing is, of course, that he is now really running a bit away with the culture, so I also need to make sure that I get a big war going at some point, otherwise his lead might just be too big. And Danny Boy, of course, at the moment could also still be vulnerable, but as you can see, he will now be able to get tanks, and I do think that will be quite helpful for him in order to build enough military. He is taking Chaplin here, is actually willing to elect him already this turn. Culture-wise, he is producing the same as with James Cook. He gets the happy face, but he doesn't need them right now, and could have maybe still used James Cook for colonizing, but maybe he was afraid of an iconoclasm if he doesn't have knowledge about that event, and he then goes for fundamentalism and for tanks this turn. The Spencer Warrior builds 2 tanks, is now already at 28 strength, and I mean, with this many resources, he might now just be able to build more and more tanks, and that could already give him quite a big amount of strength. And also he is still in the lead by quite a bit. Now it is my turn. I am the weakest, but I have now a good event to seed. I thought about offering the international tourism, especially to Danny Boy. He has a big lead. He has now those tanks and the fundamentalism. Maybe he would accept it. But I also might not have that many politics phases left. I can now see the good impact. I will again make sure to get 3 draws. One politics action, I need to go for the war. It's certainly possible that I will draw an aggression, so at my last turn I might potentially just go for an aggression. And I was afraid that it could be quite bad for me if the international tourism doesn't get accepted here. And it is certainly possible. Danny Boy sees that I have some military potential. Maybe at the end doesn't want to give me that much additional culture. So maybe I should just risk it. I do think it might still very well accept it. Maybe I was too afraid here, but at the end I just rather wanted to make sure to get that impact into the deck. The prosperity is revealed, so I don't get punished for being the weakest, which is nice. And I also gain 5 additional food. I take the military build-up this turn. It might still be helpful for me, but it's also a bit of a denial, as I at this point thought the player who more likely will be the vulnerable one that I can hit will be Payada. Sadly, at this point I also thought it might be very tricky for me to finish first, and it might just be that I can war 1 player and then finish in front of that player, and I thought that player might be Payada, and I didn't want to give him the military build-up. So I take that military build-up. I play the reserves for resources actually. I build 2 cannons. I increase my population. Playing the reserves for resources I think was mainly to make space in my hand and to spend some actions. And I needed to play those reserves earlier because it's one of those situations that can sometimes happen. If I build the cannons first and then played the reserves, I actually would have had corruption now. Sometimes it is possible that there is a situation where the order makes a difference, and now I needed to play the reserves first to already get a blue token on bronze mines that I can then spend um, on investing into the cannons, because now I have all of my blue tokens in the mines lying around on coal. If I would have invested into the cannons first and then played the reserves, one of the blue tokens would have lied around here and actually two more. And so one blue token would be away here, but three of the blue tokens would be lying around here. So I needed to play the reserves first to spend the blue tokens lying around in the bronze mines. That's important to have in mind, because sometimes you play out your turn thinking about what you want to do. You see you have some civil actions left, and you play the reserves and see, ah, dang, that leads to corruption. That's not an option, but you have to be careful, because there can be situations where the order makes a difference. So that was one of those situations, and that is why I already, before building those cannons, needed to play the reserves. I increased my population, and then I will just end up taking some cards. I will develop the satellites, and that maybe could be a mistake here. It could be a mistake because at this point I was not certain yet whether I should go into mechanized army or positional army. The positional army might just need a lot more destruction, and I thought I might still want to go into the mechanized army. The thing is, I only still have that hybrid war in hand, and I don't have that many draws left, so I might need to start planning with that hybrid war. And if I want to go for that hybrid war, I really might need a copy of professional sports. It will give me some additional strength and just makes it that I can cope with the loss of the happy faces. But and when I then invest 7 science into the professional sports, I actually am missing 1 science now to be able to develop professional sports, air forces, and cavalrymen in the next 2 turns. Meaning I might now take myself the option away to go into the mechanized army tactic. I might get help from Vavaidea, I might get help from Churchill, and so maybe that could be fine. Maybe I want to maximize the amount of strength that I can build anyway, and I should have enough resources and military actions to go into the positional army, so the additional destruction might be worth it just because I have more strength overall. I mean, when I go for 2 mechanized army tactics with air forces, I'm at getting 40 out of my tactic. If I go for 2 positional army tactics with air forces, I have 48 out of my tactics, so 8 additional strength. Of course, I could just go for mechanized armies and then build more air forces, but still I gain a bigger amount of strength out of the positional army, and I don't need to develop the cavalryman for that, spending an action and 6 science, saving an action and 6 science, so maybe it's fine to commit to the satellites already, but I could have also just developed the air forces. Maybe that would be the safer call, because it's the question if there's a colony coming, if I would even be willing to bid for that. But if it's, maybe there are some colonies that would be helpful for me, and with that I developed the satellites here. And I'm not sure if maybe the strength of the satellites is actually also relevant. Let me quickly check. I have only an H2 defense card still. I would be at 90 in strength, so yeah, only with an H2 defense card I would be in danger of an aggression. And then I kinda have to go for the satellites here, or maybe miss out on some draws, but I thought maybe it could still be nice to have the option to choose between a war over culture or a hybrid war. And now I have 2 civil actions left. They are not the most interesting cards for me to take. Some cheap technologies might still be nice. There might be Nobel Prizes still. But I don't necessarily need those cards, so I thought about increasing my population. The thing is, I don't have knowledge about immigration, I think also not about civil unrest, so I might potentially get punished by a happy face related event. And Danny Boy has more than enough happy faces. Pajada also doesn't have an unhappy work at the moment, so I at the end decided to just take multimedia and the mechanized agriculture. Both of those cards could potentially help me for some impacts. I still have the impact of science in hand. I also thought that maybe there could still be a world where I want to do something peaceful, especially if I get professional sports peer on the internet, but it might cost me too many actions anyway to get all of those things. So I thought I will end up pushing this. I'm following through with the military push, but If I go for the internet, and of course the multimedia could be nice. I still have the impact of technology in hand. I'm not sure if I might actually discard it now. Yes, I will discard it, deciding to keep the international tourism in hand in case I don't draw another strong impact. It could be best to maybe then offer it at the next turn. But I do actually get an interesting impact, especially one that works nicely with my plan of building up a lot of strength, and that is the impact of strength. So that is, of course, also pushing me a bit more into the direction of going for a war, which already I thought I might want to do anyway, and I also have an aggression now. It's Pajada's turn now. He cedes, the autonomous territory is revealed, so there is actually a colony coming, and me developing satellites at least made it that I can push the price a little bit for Pajada, but I certainly was not willing here to a bit more than one unit, so Pajada at the end is able to win it, but at least he doesn't win it for the one warrior that he still had lying around, and instead has to send a cannon away. And he is taking 5 resources, so gets the resources spent for the cannon back. Basically, has even more actions now. Builds an air force, rebuilds the cannon, increases population to get out of corruption, takes the tanks, the efficient upgrade, and the democracy, and the civil service. And the fact that he's skipping the modern infantry here, I do think is telling something. Because he took the tanks, and he could have easily taken the modern infantry. I mean, taking democracy, civil service for that many actions is easily something that he could have skipped. And so that kind of is telling that maybe he has a mechanized army tactic in hand. Maybe he's also bluffing. There's another copy of modern infantry coming, so maybe it could be worth it for a bluff. But I have, of course, one copy of mechanized army tactic in hand, but there's a second one, and I kind of felt like him taking tanks here and skipping modern infantry is a sign that he has a copy of mechanized army available for himself. Now it's Danny Boy's turn. He doesn't see it, which I was happy about, because the crime wave is in the deck. It's not the most influential event, but still I might potentially get hit by it if the Danny Boy seeds here. He takes the Hollywood, increases his population 2 times, builds 2 tanks, is now at 43 strength, increases population again, makes sure to get 3 draws, has still 29 resources, so at this point I thought it might be difficult to do anything about Danny Boy. He can easily build lots of tanks. Already at the next turn he could just build 4 more tanks, and that would put him at 73 already, and then there's another turn where he can build up even more strength, so I don't think a war against him will be big enough for me to catch up to him. So at this point I was thinking that I'm probably sadly only blowing for 2nd place in this game, and that it will depend on how big my war will be against Pajada. I see the impact of strength this turn. I wanted to get that into the deck, and here the wealthy territory is revealed. I'm not sure if I make a mistake here. I had a clear plan on how to play my turn, and it would get a bit awkward if I win this colony to still make sure that I prepare well enough. I might even need to skip my leader here, or hope that I might still have a shot at getting Pierre at the next turn, but he might just be discarded because Pajada very likely may take the urban growth. So it would be a bit awkward, but of course I would at least get some resources back, but the population and the action to get that unit back is just quite bad. So I think it's the right call to not bid for that, just taking myself into account. The problem is here that, as you can see, Pajada sadly is able to win that colony for just a warrior that he doesn't really need. He has now 9 additional resources available to build up some military, and I was really afraid that that could make a very big difference, and maybe I should have bid for that. I mean, Pajada just sent a cannon away for the autonomous territory instead of a warrior, so there were some signs that maybe he doesn't have another defense card available, but sadly he has one now, wins it for a warrior. But it also would have been a bit tricky for me if I won it, but now Pajada's strength potential might be quite a bit higher, and so maybe I should have bid for this colony here. I will go for the professional sports. I still didn't draw a normal war, so I kind of have to prepare for my happy faces. I then played a military build-up, as I'm actually the weakest right now. I will now only take Churchill in hand, as I'm missing the civil action at the end to elect him. But I played some turns with electing Churchill, and then I thought I might want to use his resources. without using a science, because I decided this turn that I will go for the positional army instead of the mechanized army. And then instead of using Churchill for 3 resources and then being at an amount of strength where the next turn I might not be able to use the military build-up for 10 resources any longer, I thought it's better to just use it for 10 resources now. I can build a professional sports, increase my population, build 2 riflemen, take Churchill in hand, and reveal the tactic. I need to reveal the tactic already because I have now just enough military actions with the patriotism to declare a hybrid war. With the patriotism, I have 4 military actions left after declaring the war, meaning I can build 2 riflemen and 2 air forces. Also, not electing Churchill has another advantage. It means that I'm staying the strongest for now. Of course, there are no Nobel Prizes, but I might not that easily be able to score Nobel Prize anyway, and I keep now the strength of Nobel, meaning if the crime wave is revealed, I might not lose some culture to it, and also in case there's another strength event coming. And at the next turn, I can elect Churchill, play the patriotism, develop air forces, destroy 4 things, build some units, and then I can go up to more than 90 strength. So I can go up to go for a big war. And despite pajada having that many resources, I should still get a decent war going here. I reveal the tactic here, meaning pajada can prepare to copy it, but as said, I thought he might have a mechanized army tactic anyway, and even if he goes for copying the positional army tactic, even after gaining those 9 additional resources, he is now still not prepared to go for 2 positional army tactics with air forces. Even 2 positional army tactics with only 1 air force is not really possible unless he maybe gets both of those yellow cards that give him additional resources. So I was thinking it's not too bad revealing that tactic already. I thought about turns where I get into Pierre to get the Olympic Games, but I might want to go for war and an aggression, potentially at least. And I also just didn't find the additional action, so I took Churchill in hand so that I can at least get a bit of culture out of him during the last 2 turns, or maybe also save some science and resources at the next turn, even though I don't necessarily need them even. So I'm not sure, maybe if I don't need the resource of Churchill, I'm just having an idea of a line that I didn't thought of. Maybe it could even be an idea to not take Churchill and destroy something already. I'm not sure if it works resource-wise. I guess maybe then I am missing the resources, but let's quickly calculate it through. I could destroy something already. Then I have 25 plus patriotism, 29 resources. And then with the 2 actions of not taking and not electing Churchill, I could destroy an additional thing and build a professional sports, but of course only if I have the resources. I have 29 resources, I need 24. I guess I would have exactly enough resources to do all of this, but it would cause even more distraction and I don't have the culture from Churchill. Nonetheless, it would be far more strength for a war, so maybe that's an option that I should have considered. But at the end I went with Churchill here, who either might just score me 6 culture in the 2 remaining turns, or 3 science, 3 resources, and 3 culture, which is still a decent amount of value. I draw some cards here, the Infiltrate and the Plunder. Pajada offers a military alliance to me, I accepted that, just keeping my options open, but I thought I might not attack Danny Boy, as he might just threaten too much strength. Pajada is actually willing to spend 4 resources here on the first step of the United Nations to use that engineering genius, is destroying some farms now to build some cannons going up to 38 strength, builds also an air force, is now even the strongest at 48, meaning at Danny Boy's turn there's the risk that I might get hit by the crime wave. He takes the urban growth, the engineering genius, and a copy of reserves. And I do think that turn is another very big indicator that pajada has the mechanized army tactic available, because again he didn't take the modern infantry, and also he is now not having enough resources to build 2 more cannons and an air force, but he is having just enough resources with the reserves, or 1 more than he needs, to go for 2 tanks. So again, it's looking like he has the mechanized army tactic available, but that might not be enough for him, and the hybrid war might actually cause some really big uprising issues for him, because the problem for him is he doesn't have enough science to go into both tanks and professional sports here. Also, one thing about my situation is, which is somewhat nice for me, is that I only can go for 2 armies with 2 air forces if I have a hybrid war. And of course, pajada needs to consider that and maybe also thinks that I have a hybrid war with how I played my turn. Nonetheless, maybe there's still a thought back in his mind that maybe I have just a normal war, maybe I just won't go for that big of a war, and so the fact that I am in a position where I only can go for a big amount of strength when I have a hybrid war, maybe because there's only one copy of that war, makes it that pajada is just a tiny little bit less afraid, but of course also he might just expect that there's a hybrid war coming. So, but sometimes when the hybrid war is the only way how you can go forward, and it makes your attack a bit more surprising. I guess it's not really the situation in that case with how I played my turn. It's more maybe in situations where you can sneak in a little bit of military, and then there's just a hybrid war, and your turn looks normal anyway, and then you can maybe surprise your opponents, um, who maybe can't really play around that one card that much. Danny Boy doesn't see it, which I was happy to see. I was happy to see also that he takes the professional spots, taking the option away from pajada to fix his happy face with that. But if he has indeed a mechanized army tactic, he might not want to go for that anyway. Danny Boy builds some tanks, builds another tank, and he has actually enough resources, actions to build 4 more tanks and the professional spots. If he would get hit by a war with building a professional sports, he would not have any issues with the uprising from the hybrid war, and then he would get plus 34 strength, meaning he would be at 91 strength. And while I would be able to beat that, especially with the war being a hybrid war, the war would just not be big enough. It would be bigger against pajada. The uprising issues that pajada has because of the hybrid war are a lot bigger. So I need to target pajada here, but I don't really have any big hopes for the first place, or maybe almost no hopes. I might have some hopes if pajada has no mechanized army tactic, if that was some sort of a bluff, but I felt like that is very unlikely. Because at least the 2 impacts that I have in there, impact of progress and impact of strength, might end up being very big impacts against Danny Boy. Danny Boy's impact of progress is not really that great, and the impact of strength might be plus 14 as well. So I thought that if it should happen that I get actually more culture than expected out of the war against pajada, there might still be a chance for the first place, and then if I maybe get an armed intervention into against Danny Boy. But yeah, I go for the hybrid war now against pajada. I elect Churchill. I had to think about whether I want to get the 3 culture from him or the 3 additional science and resource, and decided for the 3 science and resource at the end, because the science makes the difference now that it will destroy some labs. I could have kept some labs, but that again would have taken away some options for me, and I would need to keep both labs in order to, if I don't use Churchill science, in order to go for multimedia at the next turn. And now I can just destroy both labs. And wait. I would be at 6. I would be at 4 plus 5. Yeah, so I need to keep both labs. And now, if I destroy both labs, I'm still at 9. Wait, but something doesn't make sense in my head right now. Anyway, I can go for the multimedia thanks to using Churchill's resources and science, and the multimedia might then just allow me to, with the resource that I will have left, build some more culture, and I was thinking that it will make up for the 3 culture that I miss out on from Churchill right now. I need to play the patriotism. I don't need it for the resource, but I need it for the military action. I destroy some things here, and I keep 1 mine, destroying both farms. And then I build 2 riflemen and 2 air forces, going up to 94 strength. And when we take a look at Pajada Civilization, those 2 unhappy faces from the hybrid war are really causing some issues for him here. And while I, thanks to the Eiffel Tower, and also of course thanks to going to that bro sports, I don't have any happy face issues. Let's see if Pajada will indeed have the mechanized army tactic, or if he maybe plans on going for finishing the United Nations and only building maybe 2 more cannons or something. He seeds The crime wave isn't revealed yet, instead the Cold War. So now I actually wouldn't have needed the science of Churchill that much. If I would have known that the Cold War is on top, I then might have taken the culture from him, but at least I still have a bit more resource available, but probably now in hindsight it would have been better to take the culture. But I of course didn't have knowledge about that event. Pajada develops the tanks, plays the reserves, upgrades that farm to not have any famine for free, destroys two things, destroys already two more things, builds two cannons, two tanks, destroys another thing, so he isn't having an uprising so that he gets his culture production at the end of his turn. And then he has the mechanized army tactic going up to 75 strength. So I will steal 19 culture from him with the hybrid war, but he still has a bit of a lead, so it's not clear if that war will actually be big enough for me. At least I have two decent impacts already in there. Those are not as great against Pajada as they are against Danny Boy, but still they are giving me some points. Now it's Danny Boy's turn. He will increase his population, and he can now just build two operas and has still enough resource to finish the Hollywood for 30 points, and with that he has just such a big lead that especially now that Pajada went for the mechanized army tactic, even with my good impacts in there, I can't really hope finishing before him. He's now at 188 in culture, while I, when the war is resolved, am at just a bit more than 100, so the gap is just too big and I need to focus on finishing before Pajada. And I almost overlooked an option here for my politics phase, because I was at the turn before thinking that at the next turn my decision might be between playing armed intervention or impact of architecture. I could then build a multimedia and a professional sports for the impact of architecture, another reason why I really wanted to make sure to be able to get into that multimedia. And the impact of architecture would be +7 against Pajada. I would gain 3 culture for seeding, and there's actually the crime wave still on top, so I thought about I just want to see the impact of architecture. The thing is, at the end of my last turn, Pajada still had 6 science production, Danny Boy still had 4 science production, but Pajada destroyed both of his labs, Danny Boy destroyed 1 lab, meaning that I actually, when I built one multimedia, I am the strongest for the impact of science, and that's an impact that even gives me +14 against Pajada, and also gives me more against Danny Boy than the impact of architecture would be. So for a moment I even missed out on that. I clicked on it by accident and then saw what is happening. So there was the chance that I might just overlook that completely, but luckily I saw it, and I see the impact of science in there. The crime wave is revealed, and then this turn I can build a multimedia, and now that the impact of architecture is not in there, I can, instead of building a professional sports, also just build a theology for 1 more culture production. Of course, there might be impact of competition, but if that impact is in there, it's a nice one for me in any way, and I have 3 out of the 5 impacts seeded, and Pajada needs some good impacts in order to win, so the impact of competition is an impact that I don't have to worry about, and so I can just build a religion. And then for the 2 final impacts, or before the final impacts, Danny Boy has just too big of a lead. There's no chance that any of I or Pajada will catch up to him. But between me and Pajada, it's still quite close. Pajada is still 2 culture in the lead, but I have some decent impacts in there, so Pajada needs 2 very good impacts for him out of the ones that I don't have knowledge about. And the first one is actually a decent impact for him. The impact of culture is giving him +7 against me. And then there is actually the impact of competition, which I could have made bigger with building a professional sports, but I was still very happy to see it, because it is actually a good impact for me here. Then there's the impact of science, that is very good for me against Pajada. There is the impact of progress, that's very good for me against Danny Boy, but also solid against Pajada, giving me +4 against him. And then there's the impact of strength, which gives me +7 against Pajada. And so at the end, I am at least able to get the 2nd place in this game. And Danny Boy at the end is able to win that by quite a bit of a margin. Yeah, so that was a bit of a tricky game for me, especially in the early game. The foray and the uncertain borders were the 2 events revealed first, and definitely caused some harm to me, or gave a bit of a boost to my opponents. And then at the beginning and middle of H2, my opponents find sadly nice ways to invest the resource that they have, and I was quite a bit worried about where the game was heading towards for me. But at least I got into coal, I got a relatively early government farm, so I also was able to build up something nice, and I had all of those military techs, the strategic territory, gave me that hybrid war, which was then the only war that I drew. And at the end I just built up a lot of military, and with that one war at least finished second, which I guess is a somewhat solid result, especially looking back at the standings. It could be important to finish before Pajada, but there is also another game finished where I wasn't involved, and we will see that also Danny Boy is also now in quite a strong position actually, so winning that of course would have been a lot better for me. Yeah, so at the end I was happy to at least being able to finish second, as I was worried during age 3 when Pajada went for communism, operas, Einstein, that there's a chance that maybe the culture lead will be getting too big. But at the end I had some very solid impacts that I could put into the deck. Maybe it was also the right call at the end to not offer this international tourism, because I at the end indeed needed all of my politics actions for something useful. So if that would have gotten rejected, it could have had quite an impact. So no, at the end that hybrid war was enough for the second place. After Danny Boy got the early oil, I think he was just in a very strong position already before he was in a strong position because of his culture lead, but then he had just that many resources to work with that he only needed tanks and hussars to actually make it that he is threatening enough strength more than Pajada, who actually had the air forces. Danny Boy of course having fundamentalism and railroad as sources of additional strength as well. Also, what Pajada lost the strategic territory early on to the independence declaration, so it also cost him a little bit of strength. Alright, so we are at the end of the game here, and as I said, there's also another game finished where I wasn't involved, so let's take a quick look at the standings. And in that other game, Danny Boy was able to win against Pajada and Bright Future, and as you can see, Danny Boy is actually in the lead right now, scoring 2 wins in the games of the second batch so far, and also winning the last game of the last batch. So he had now 3 victories in a row. Was actually not having the greatest start, 2 points after the first 2 games finished, but now he is in the lead and actually has very good chances to move to the Grandmaster division now, because I mean, I can still win my last game, going up to 19 points. Potentially Arne could win his last 2 games, going up to 19 points as well. I actually didn't check how it is for Danny Boy and Arne. Maybe I can do that very quickly. Danny Boy has, I guess Danny Boy has finished 1 time before Arne, 1 time behind him. So if Arne would win the 1 game that he plays still against Danny Boy, then he would win a tiebreaker. So Danny Boy would need to win his last game in order to be safe from that. In case I win my last game, though, then Danny Boy would win a tiebreaker against me, and I am sadly not playing against Danny Boy in the last game, so I don't have it in my own hands any longer. I need to win, and Danny Boy needs to lose that last game, which is sadly not that realistic. So yeah, that's of course not ideal, and I need some hope now in order to still finish first. And there's even a bit of a danger of still getting relegated, because Arne, if he gets some good results and I maybe lose my last game, only finish second. I mean, if I finish second, I win the tiebreaker against Pajada, but if I should lose this game, it could certainly get very dangerous and Arne might overtake me. So in my last game, I still have hopes to advance if I win, but also I'm still in danger of getting relegated if I lose, just showing that it is relatively close. For Bright Future, the season hasn't been going great so far. He is at 4 losses at the moment, and with only having 2 games remaining, it is actually already clear that he will get relegated. Yeah, so the season went a bit unfortunate for him. Yeah, but apart from that, it's actually relatively close, and let's see how the season will end with the last 2 games when the last 2 games are finished. Alright, and we are at the end of the video. I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. Then, yeah, I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.